Yes, you start. I shouldn't have said
Is that voice off? Does that sound off?
Hey, come on.
You obviously can do a better job.
Oh, I don't sing. I won't sing. I'll leave it to other people.
Kathy, I'd like to put a 25-minute time limit on tonight's meeting.
Granted.
that is up to you people.
Really?
25 minutes.
Well,
Anyone, any
We
dissent?
fully support you. In fact, 25 might be too long.
yeah, Todd, leave the
What does she
verbs
mean by you?
out.
What does she mean by you?
You can fill in the blanks.
Leave out.
All right, here we
All
go.
right, I would like to call to order. Regular meeting, Batavia Board of Education, July 17th, 2018. Kathy, could you please call the roll?
Babar, Blakely, Dryden,
Here.
Gaspar,
Here.
Locke, Lowe,
Present.
Drumroll.
Here. If everyone stand and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have no members of the public here tonight, but we do have Todd Swanson. Please come join us at the table. No verbs.
Hi again, everyone. Just two things for tonight, so I'll make them short. First off, over the 4th of July week, the National Education had the Representative Assembly in Minneapolis, which is about a week-long time for members across the country to come together to tackle pressing issues that are facing education nationwide. And so we sent 3 representatives that represented the Batavia Education Association there, and so we're going to get a report back from them, and we'll be able to, the next board meeting, share out some of the things that they observed and some of the action that they took that while they were there. So that was a really great opportunity. Next week, myself and Amy B. and Carrie will be going down to, we have a statewide assembly, it's a summer leadership academy that we're going to be going, and I'll be attending a 5-day new president's training down there, so get lots of training to come back ready to go, so that'll be great. And then just the other thing, it's just a point of information for the board, and I just wanted to, like John has been working on the stipend committee, and when we left the school year, the stipend committee was kind of, their recommendation was kind of in a turmoil a little bit, and we actually have spent this summer working extremely collaboratively through the BEA and working with Steve and the stipend committee to come to a point today where we're in a really good spot with that. And knowing that this coming school year is the end of our CBA for this 2019 school year, I'm just really excited for the spirit of collaboration that we have had this summer that's going to move us forward through that. So just kudos to administration, the stipend committee team, and the BEA for coming together and getting to a spot where it's going to be a win-win for everybody. So just good news there.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Committee updates. Do any board members have committee updates?
No.
Meet with their committee?
Do you want to? No. Okay.
All right.
We're good.
There is a facilities committee meeting next Tuesday. We just posted the agenda. That's open to the public. It's here at RJAC at 6 p.m.
All right.
Yeah.
Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All of the reports are included in the agenda. So, Mr. Pierce, would you take us through the consent agenda, please?
Absolutely. 4.1 is the approval of the June 19th, 2018 regular meeting minutes. 4.2 is the monthly personnel report. 4.3, monthly payroll and bills. 4.4 is our donations. Louise White PTO donated over $2,300 for field trip reimbursements. The Grace McWayne PTO donated $11,600 and change for science kits and a projector. And finally, the Batavia Mothers Club donated just over $3,000 for our Britannica school subscriptions. 4.5 are the curriculum contracts for the 2018-2019 school year. 4.6 is the disbursement of property tax rebate. 4.7 is the paper bid for fiscal year 19. 4.8 is the RJAC window replacement project, and 4.9 wraps up with the approval of the consent agenda.
right, are there any items for clarification or removal from the consent agenda?
I just don't understand why Don doesn't have anything in here.
I don't know. Just a little rusty, John.
Sorry.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Gaspar, second by Dryden. Tony, can we voice vote? I can't remember.
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. On to reports.
The first two reports are brought to you by the business office. There was one FOIA request that the business office granted, and then there are your regularly occurring treasurer's reports, your monthly treasurer's reports. So if there's any questions, we can answer those. If not, I will turn it over to Tony for the tentative budget.
All 31 pages.
Yeah, yes. I will project a summary of this in just a moment. So the good news is the budget is balanced. It looks as though we will see approximately a $1.6 million surplus in fiscal 19, although that is subject to change. So this is the tentative budget that we're required to post and put on public display for 30 days, which we'll do so today with your blessing. We'll hold a public hearing at our regular meeting in August with final approval of the budget in September after, just before the conclusion of the first quarter of our fiscal year. In terms of what's changed for this year over last year, we're actually expecting a decrease in revenues to $106 million. And that's because we received a number of one-time revenues in fiscal 18 that we will not continue to receive in 19. I'll explain that later in a bit. Our evidence-based funding, which was GSA, general state aid funding in the past, is going to stay steady at $5 million. And our expenditures will go up a little bit to $104.4 million, up a little bit more than 0.5%. Spending on salaries a little bit more than 1%, although that doesn't include any increases for VESPA as we're at present in negotiations with that collective bargaining unit. And the increases in expenditures, I'd say the largest increase when we look at things is primarily driven by employee benefits, and that is a result of our 12.5% increase on our PPO plans. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. In terms of staffing and enrollment, we're looking at about 646 FTE, although that still is subject to change. We're finalizing things in terms of student enrollment and class sizes and all the like over the next few weeks as we finally get some firmer numbers, but that will not, we don't expect that to change much. We do expect that enrollment will decline to just over 5,800 students. But the good news is that our staffing ratio, we're looking at the number of students to staff, that's going to improve a little bit, so there'll be 9 students to every staff member. And last year in fiscal 18, it was 9.1. Interestingly enough, that's the best it's been in the last 5 years. in terms of
Question,
staff.
is that certified staff or is that all
That's
staff?
all staff. I'll show you the certified staff though in a little bit. Just skip past the executive summary, but it's there for you to read. I'm going to dig into some of the details, just overall giving you a view of revenues by their functions and their categories. We break things out into operating and non-operating. Really concerned about the operating primarily because that's what we deal with day to day. Non-operating includes our capital projects and debt. Those essentially take care of themselves with bonds and or funding that we move money into our capital projects fund to fund projects. And so that can increase or decrease. We can have surpluses or deficits in a given year. But if we have deficits in the operating funds, that would be an area of concern. Good news is we're looking at a surplus of about $1.5 million. We spend obviously most of our money in instructional services and we receive most of our money from local sources, meaning local property taxes. And I'll show you a breakout here. So this is a breakout of our revenues by source, obviously the vast majority of which come from local property taxes. The second largest being state funding and the state's EDF. That can be skewed a little bit because included in this budget, it was considered to be a best practice in budgeting is on behalf payments, and that's the payments that the state of Illinois makes for the TRS pensions. And that's roughly about $15 million. So that can skew numbers a little bit. If you took that number out, it would make our local property taxes appear well over 80% in terms of what the community contributes to operating our school district as our primary funding source, as it is for most school districts in our situation throughout the state of Illinois. And again, revenue is declining slightly from $107.5 million, although I have to note that these numbers that you see in terms of prior actual, they're unaudited, and this was even before we closed our books that we ran these reports, and so they very much will change the prior actual numbers, both in terms of what we've actually spent as we close the books and then what the auditors do. So we won't really know those numbers in final detail really until about mid-September, as we do every year. And unfortunately, that's when we actually adopt our budget. It's a timing issue. I wish we could make it better, but that's the reality that we face in this state. Looking at expenditures overall, primarily spend our money on instruction, followed by support services. Overall, spending will go up slightly to $104.5 million. And looking at those same expenditures by object, meaning where the money is spent, both in terms of salary, benefits, purchase services, those sorts of things. Primarily, our budget goes to salaries and benefits, obviously. Although we do a lot of outsourcing in Batavia. We outsource our food service, our transportation, our custodial. So we have a much larger percentage typically for purchase services than most school districts. So oftentimes school districts' numbers overall, what they spend on salaries and benefits are typically larger than us because we outsource.
Tony, why were our actuals so much less than our budget?
Because the way we do things is we pay teachers in the months of July and August for the work that they did in the prior school year. And this just hasn't been captured yet because when we ran this report.
It's a timing issue?
It's a timing issue.
Okay.
So the actual will be very similar to the budget. I don't know exactly where it's going to land, but again, that's what makes this so difficult. And it can be helpful to look at prior actual in certain areas, but not very unhelpful in others. So basically, when it comes to salaries and benefits, don't look at prior actual. When it comes to everything else, it's going to be fairly close, but we have a lot of bills that we pay at the last minute too in the fiscal year that aren't necessarily reflected here. But that's a good question. Thank you. Salaries, we look at things in terms of permanent positions, temporary positions, and supplemental pay. Overall, in terms of permanent positions, we're looking at a 1.1% increase, holding staffing level. And again, as I noted, when you look at categories like clerical, paraprofessionals, and maintenance, we're in the midst of negotiations with BESPA, so these are flat rates. We haven't put any increases in their wages into this budget. This is just what it is going to cost if we continue forward with status quo and that level. Again, here in terms of benefits, as I mentioned, you see the line item here for TRS on behalf payments, about $15 million. If you exclude that, total benefits would look much larger in terms of their increase, primarily because of medical insurance. You see that increase at 16%, and as I mentioned earlier, that's driven by a 12.5% increase on our PPO plans and the premiums for this year. But the reason why it's higher is because we have to, for those months of July and August in 2019, we have to include increases for teachers and what we contribute toward their benefits there too. So that's going to increase that number even beyond that 12.5% that we're capturing this year. Purchase services is actually down a bit for a number of reasons. It's down in terms of what we're spending on rentals and leases because we're not buying as many computers in 2019 as we did in 2018. So Don will theoretically not have as many transactions for you to approve, John, which is a good thing. We're saving some money on printing because we moved to the new printer copier system. We're saving some money in other areas as well in terms of repair services and sanitation services. That's just an error. We were miscategorizing some funds in our budget when it came to sanitation services in 2018, and we corrected that for 2019. Supplies and materials, this is likely going to go up. Typically, when it comes to federal funds, they do a preliminary allocation. We spend that primarily on staffing, and then they do a secondary allocation if they have more money. Right now, we're budgeting with the preliminary allocation, and when they give us more money, we likely spend that additional allocation on supplies and materials in other areas. And so this spending is likely to go up as we get to the middle of the school year because the money that we'll spend in those areas will come from grant funds. Otherwise, I don't think there's and there's some savings there from electricity and natural gas. That's the primary drivers of the savings in this particular area.
So electricity and lights?
The lights. We use a 3-year rolling average to predict what those costs are going to be, so it's pretty tricky. You never really quite know. It's highly dependent on the weather. It's highly dependent on market rates. So it's pretty difficult to budget for those things, and they are pretty significant line items too. So that's why we keep a contingency amount in the O&M fund so that we can move money into those funds if need be. Other objects, again, you see here the reserve for contingency. They're spread across all areas of the budget, operations and maintenance. There's contingency budgets in every area of our budget, and for budget managers, school level, in the education fund for special education. And if we have to hire more staff, this is where the funding would come from. If we had to spend more for electricity or natural gas, that's where the funding would come from as well. But we never spend money on a contingency, we always move it to where it's needed. So you'll see prior actual is always 0, and in the prior budget, we ratcheted down those amounts from the prior year to 40,000. The other thing that's different here is what we're paying for in other objects. On the very bottom there is 2, you'll see an increase. The property tax rebate for the outlet mall expansion is here, and this went up a little bit this year compared to last year because that's the value of the property went up. And so we're budgeting based off of what we're trying to contribute for our intergovernmental agreement with the city of Aurora and what the actual value of that property
But
is.
it still has a maximum amount, right?
There is a maximum amount, and off the top of my head, I can't recall. I think with this year's payment in 2019 combined with 2018, that brings us into the 1.2 million.
Yes.
And it's a total of 3.5.
3.2 million total. So we have a number of years yet of payments that we'll be making.
So this number will fluctuate based on the valuations,
that
but the
problem.
bottom line is we hit that and then we're done.
Here's a breakdown of departments and school funds. I'll let you peruse that. I won't go into detail. Here's a however,
Can I go back to that last one, just without a clarification on that one right there?
this one.
Yes. I noticed there was a lot of the negative parts, but there was a few that were in the double digits for
For increases?
increases, and I was just wondering, is it something that just might have come up all of a sudden for a school year on a school, or, and the one that kind of was Gus's end, but the other one was the special education grants, so I was just trying to get an understanding of that one. I mean, there's grants, how is that?
So one thing that happened last year is we accidentally under budgeted for special education grants, and so the increase for next year, actually with the prior actual year is in fact accurate for that particular one. So the prior budget said 1.433 in terms of what we anticipated of receiving, but we actually received 1.5. And next year we're going to spend 1.6 and receive 1.6. So it looks like it's a 16% increase, but it's not in actuality.
Okay.
On here. So that's that one. The capital projects, the board agreed to increase the contributions toward capital projects because of the savings from the lighting project.
Right,
So that's the
okay.
double.
So that had to do with the lighting part.
Technology went down by 30% because we're not spending as much money on computers based off of how we do our cycles. Our ESSA grants are down primarily because, again, the initial allocation, they're always due to allocations. We're likely going to be very close to probably a 0% increase at the end of this fiscal 19, but right now we're going to do 15%. Okay. The preliminary allocation is 15% less.
You know, 1 or 2%, plus or so, I'm not too concerned about. Those just kind of was a red flag, and the same with Gustafson. I mean, that one is now, does that have to do with the early childhood center area too, or is that a different funding?
At the school level, we allocate based off of student population, so
Okay.
that's where the student population is increasing the most. So that's our preliminary estimate. We'll refine that once we get a final enrollment count. So
Okay.
it's all based on basically a per pupil allocation.
All right, thank you.
So in keeping in mind John Dryden, your request from last year, been thinking about this for the better part of the year as to how we could show these trends a little bit better. So I broke this out by the various funding sources, and so we can see some trends as to what our revenue looks like for the last 5 years, essentially. So we've got, it's 5 year, 4 year, last 5 year, 4 years. FY18 is the current, or the year that we just ended, and 2019 is the year that we just started. So it's a little skewed in terms of history. We don't fully know what 2018 is yet, so keep that in mind. You're going to see how, obviously, our growth and revenue comes primarily from property taxes. State sources, relatively stable. In 2018, we saw a little bit of an increase, but that was effectively because of the implementation of the EBF formula and what were one-time revenues, just based on timing. It wasn't like the state was giving us more money. And the same trends for by function, where we're spending our money, how it fluctuates, construction, support services, those sorts of things.
That's useful.
And then by object, salary and benefits. You can see that the red bar, which represents salaries in this graph, is the one that's growing the most. It's tough to read. You have to spend some time looking at these, but the on-behalf payments I wouldn't pay much attention to. I wouldn't pay much attention to the transfers. Those come from primarily bond refunding. So when you're refunding our bonds to get better interest rates, those proceeds from bonds go into transfers.
You said that the red bar was salaries and not benefits, right?
Did I say salaries?
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay.
Salaries and benefits, and that's
The
about the health
blue is,
insurance.
yeah, the blue is
The
the
blue is
salaries.
stable.
Right,
I'm
that's
Well, that's where I was like, it's not changing what I'm
The
I
red-
do that a lot where I start thinking one thing and saying another,
Right.
but no, it's the red bar that is benefits,
Right.
and
I
the
know
blue
we
bar
looked
is
at it.
salaries. And we've been
Salaries.
keeping salaries stable relative, because the only way we've been able to really do that is by lowering our FTE counts.
Right.
But we've been doing that in proportion to our enrollment, so we should be lowering our FTE counts because we have fewer students, and we've been maintaining that proportion. I'll show you that in just a bit here. But even still, even by having lower FTE counts, fewer people on staff, our benefits are increasing, so it's something that we need to keep an eye on and manage.
What counts as transfers? I mean, what is that?
Transfers are a way of capturing bond proceeds, and so when we refinance our bonds, we have to account for the money that we essentially receive, the loans that we receive, and then we pay them back over time, and that's how they're captured here.
Okay.
It wouldn't be fair to not include them, but it really does confuse people when they aren't included from an overall basis. Here's our net fund balance. In 2015, we had a negative fund balance, and we've enjoyed a positive fund balance for the last couple of years. I will tell you, in 2018, this number is going to be probably about $1 million higher than what is reflected here. And because what I realized a couple weeks ago is that in 2018, for levy year 2017, people prepaid their property taxes. As you know, the feds have changed how you can account for deductions. And a lot of people in Batavia, a relatively small number of people in Batavia with high property values, as far as repay their property taxes. So in the last few weeks, we received about $1 million more than we would have otherwise anticipated. We would have gotten that money anyway. We just expected to receive that in the next fiscal year. And so it slid that money. But as I was talking with the board last month, we thought maybe the surplus was going to be $2.5 million in 2019. It's going to be probably around 1 or 1.5 because those property taxes came in early and that $1 million went into 2018. So that surplus is higher than I'd like it to be. But if we're going to have a bad year in terms of us being able to estimate what our revenues are going to be, let's get it done once in 2018 and be done with it. We've received a lot of money, one-time revenues for the new EBF funding and for property taxes, both in 2017 and early in 2018, and now money that we should have received in 2019 that was recognized in 2018. So just be cognizant of that. Our operating expenditures per pupil, I happened to show you this last month, but I've included it, stabilized. I expect it to stay at a similar level. Our overall staffing graph doesn't show much difference because there isn't, but it's broken out here for each review as to where our staffing lies between support staff, exempt staff, and teachers. And then our pupil to staff ratio, which is what I find interesting. Based on, you see on the bars is our student enrollment, and that's declining. You have to be careful about those bars though, because it's a relative scale. But you can see that the top area, the kind of the yellowish, orangish line is our pupil to teacher ratio. That's our certified staff. So we are enjoying a better ratio of 13.9 students to certified the certified staff number in 2019 versus a 14.5 in 2015. And also a 9.0 ratio of staff in general, overall, all staff together to students, or excuse me, of students to staff in 2019 versus 9.2 in 2015. Finally, our property tax rates are going down, which is natural when property values are increasing, so that's good in general, but overall assessments are going up, so taxes still are going up, even though our property tax rates are going down. And that's the extent of the budget. We'll have more details to share with you in August, and of course these numbers will change for the prior actuals, and as new information comes available to us, especially when it comes to basketball bargaining.
Can I take you back to page 13 real quick?
Certainly.
Under temporary positions. Something I get a lot of grousing on is substitute pay in the district. I'm noticing a 15.9% increase here in the budget for teacher substitutes. Is that about more substitutes, or is that about an increase in pay for substitutes?
It's about more subs, and that number is aggregated from a number of budgets, and it isn't just at the district level, it'll be at school level. So between Brad's budget and individual school budgets, that's what we have allocated. And so that 15% is reflective of, is $421,000 over the 363, but we in fact spent 392, so we spent a little bit more on teacher subs than we had anticipated. So that increase isn't going to be quite 16% if you're looking at actual spending.
So is that actually substitutes that are coming from outside the building, or is this teachers within getting substitute pay?
It's all teacher substitute pay, so.
So really, either way?
Either way.
Okay, all right.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Cool pictures.
All right, the last report for tonight is, we wanted to take you on a data walk. We're going to do an abbreviated version. We'll do it again another time when we did have some absences. We had an illness and a couple people out of town for the board. So we'll revisit this topic. But I think it's a really important one, especially knowing that the state is really very adamant about the reporting that they do for the schools, and it really doesn't tell the picture that we necessarily wanted to tell. We are proud of the other things that we do for students that might not be captured on the school report card. So I'm going to turn it over to Joanne and Brad, who are going to talk about some of those other data points that we collect as a district.
That's right. So the board strategic plan, in order to measure whether we're accomplishing the goals that the board has set out, it's not just a test score. Student learning is obviously our main objective, but there's lots of different ways to get there and to measure that. So the work that we've done over the past couple of years is to look at different ways to measure whether we're accomplishing our goals as a district in the board strategic plan. So Joanne has, for a couple of years, provided a good example of the type of, I would say it's a non-traditional look at our kids in terms of whether they're performing and how they're doing. And hers has some academic data in it, but it also captures some of the board's goals about giving kids opportunities. So I'm going to ask her to go through that, and then I'm going to briefly, we had the poster boards, it was going to be super fun, but we'll do it another time. But I'll just give you a 30-second snapshot of some of the data. And you have a little worksheet at your table, and you can either fill it out or talk to me about it, but what we really want to get out of this is what's important to you as a board member in terms of the data and how we measure our growth for kids. And then also, as a board, what information do you need to do your work? And then you interface with the community a lot. What are you hearing? What do you think the people you represent, what kind of data would they like to see beyond the academic test scores that the state will put out and the other data that we put out as well? So those are our three big questions that we're trying to get out today. And we're going to give Joanne just a few minutes here to kind of summarize the class of 2018 and give you a little snapshot about some of the great things that the high school is doing to provide a lot of opportunities for our kids.
Hi.
So one of the best parts of being the high school principal is I get to see them leave and see all of the benefits of all the things that we've been working on for, sometimes almost 15 years if they went to our early childhood center. So I'm going to walk you through briefly the tables, but if you have any questions, feel free just to throw them out. This is the second page. First page just kind of gives you kind of the nuts and bolts, how many students graduated, what are the graduation requirements in board policy, how many students exit in December, and those sorts of things. But then the rest of the report talks about final transcript requests, some post-secondary experiences, and some achievement numbers. This is always the fun table that everyone wants to see. Where are our students going? And every year, there's some parts of this that change. Waubonsee is always our number one. We always send the most students to Waubonsee. That number is pretty stable. It's about 25% of our graduating class every year. That's, again, you can kind of see there's a little bit of fluctuation, but pretty much the same over the years. A new front runner is Grand Valley State. It's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The word on the street is that they are giving tons of money to our students. And so just tons of scholarship money, and they're able to compete and actually do better than our state schools in terms of tuition, even though they're an out-of-state private school. So that was the front runner this year. And this happens every couple of years. It seems like there's another school that we have never heard of before that just kind of pops to the top. So, and I think, once a couple kids go, it gets good.
Is this a liberal arts university?
It is. It's a yeah.
Okay.
A family member going to this. So my daughter. Yeah, that's where I thought. So yeah. It's always a fun table to look at and just see kind of where our kids are landing. Okay. In terms of post-secondary experiences, this is something we're always trying to improve, knowing that a lot of our students are going to college, and it is very expensive to go to college. Very, very expensive, as all of you know. So one thing we're always trying to do is find ways to help students defray some of those costs while they're in high school. So one big push that we've made over the last few years is dual credit, which is a really great experience for our students to get the benefit of having a college course in a high school classroom with their high school teachers and that level of support that they're kind of used to. So it's almost helping them kind of walk into that college experience. For the low cost of $24 to $48 per course versus taking, your English 101 class for several $1,000s. So this is the number of course enrollments, and again, we're really pushing our students into this. Sometimes to the chagrin of our local universities. They would, I'm sure, not like us to always have all of our students taking those courses for this price point. But we have heard, from many parents how this has really been just such a benefit, both financially and just getting that experience. It's been a real big win. We feel like for us, and Waubonsee is a great partner in this. They're always looking to help us out. We actually are adding another staff member next year to our English to the number of people that can teach those English courses, just because we have so many course requests. We can't add enough, it feels like, of those sections. So that's really exciting.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
What percentage are actually getting the credit? Are all of them? Or
nearly all. You have to pass the course, and so
well, right. I mean,
we
that's
have a pretty low failure rate, less than 4%
as opposed
failure.
to our AP classes where I assume
The
that
tests, you mean, like,
Yeah.
the tests are, yeah. So if you complete the Waubonsee course at Batavia, you're getting the credit versus an AP course where you have to take the test and get a 3. Sometimes a 3 or better, sometimes, depending on what university you're going to, a 4 or better.
I think the dual credit is for me personally, is by far the best thing that is happening, more than the AP classes, in my
No, I agree.
opinion on that.
I agree with
that
you.
the dual credits help out a lot more than that, but that's,
Yeah,
I'm glad we are going that route and so on.
And a lot of our students do a mixture of both. Like AP courses, because some classes we have AP courses that are not necessarily available for dual credit, so they get a good combo sometimes.
Our only limitation, as I understand, doing these dual credit, is the number of teachers we have with master's degrees in the subject they teach, which is one reason why I keep banging away at this, and will keep banging away at this.
And we're actually in a really good, we're in a good
That's where we
spot.
should be moving teachers along the salary schedule, because we want to encourage this thing.
but we're in a good spot. We have, a good number of people that are certified by Wabansi, but you're absolutely right. If we were in a different position where I wanted to add 6 more in a subject area, it would be
That would be the limitation, that's the bottleneck. So anything we can do to encourage teachers to get master's degrees in their subject helps every student.
So Fox Valley, this number looks a little funny. I want to explain why this number has decreased over the last 3 years. So we let students request the courses they want to take at Fox Valley. We don't say you have to take welding versus cosmetology. Does that make sense? So it's based on student interest, first of all. And second of all, a couple of years ago, we did limit the number of choices because of a few reasons. One, we wanted to make sure that students were going to Wabansi and going to Fox Valley and getting something out of it, whether it be Wabansi dual credit, or you'll see the next page in a second here, that licensure option. And so we did limit the courses that students could take at Wabansi to the ones that they could basically get something out of it at the end. And so the reasons, so one, if you have the page before, you'll notice that one went down, but then the certifications went up, and it's just really student choice. We just had more students interested in, let's say, the BNAT, the nursing program versus the welding program. Also, when the graduating class were juniors, that was that weird year of Wabansi, of Fox Valley, where we had a really big decrease in the students enrolled. So that 1 year, 2 years ago, we had only 37 students going to Fox Valley, versus for last year and this upcoming year, we have about 60. And so it's just kind of a weird dip, and we're back up to where we were. And we don't deny kids from going there. We certainly encourage students that fit the profile. Not every student can be successful at Fox Valley. It requires a pretty big commitment in their schedule. Sometimes 2 blocks per day for 2 years. And so some of our students that would like to, do a lot of things in our building, they might say, maybe not Fox Valley, but maybe I'll do the Link internship program or the incubator program or other experiences that give them something a little different. Does that make sense?
This has always been my argument, or my thing, that I wanted more choices or options for the kids to go that route in case they don't go off to college. This is a great stepping stone. When do the counselors, or when do they start really talking to them about this as an opportunity if the academic or the college part is not your cup of tea to go there? Right? Is that in the freshman year, or is that in the sophomore year? How's that really come about?
So there's a couple ways that we try to encourage students that would be good fits for Fox Valley or other post-secondary kind of experiences. So certainly in their freshman year, there's some 4-year planning happening with their counselor. It's a program called Career Cruising, where students can kind of pick their areas of interest, and that helps identify students that we think would be a good fit for a program like this. And then, their sophomore year, certainly, as we're starting to gear up, because students pick their classes for junior year in January of their sophomore year. So it's about 6 months in advance. And so certainly in that sophomore year, we're really ramping up and making sure that we have the right students matched for the programs. But like I said, it's not for every student. It's a huge commitment in terms of time and just, the cosmetology, for example, that's a big expense outside of just us, the school district paying tuition and plus hours. They go and do hundreds of hours outside of the school day, to get that licensure, to be eligible for that licensure.
How are the applied arts at the high school itself? How's that going? I mean, is that like a capacity? Is that, or some of those declining? Or is that...
It's every year it's a little different, because again, we develop our schedule based on student requests. There's classes like the culinary arts classes. If we could offer 12 of those courses, we would fill them, but we can't because we have 1 kitchen. In other classes, we'll see like a little bit of ebb and flow, but for example, like for next year, our art fundamentals classes are jam-packed.
Which one?
Art fundamentals. Okay. And that's another one that some years it's down a little bit, some years, the next year it just happens to be up a lot. So we always base our master schedule on student requests.
Okay. Thank you.
But one of the pieces, of course, we want to talk about is achievement results. The class of 2018 was the first class to take the SAT versus the ACT as part of the state assessment system. And so this is new for a lot of us. We all, I think, probably are pretty familiar with what an ACT score of 30 means. but an SAT score of 600, we may not be as familiar with that. So we're all kind of, finding our way. So we did include a couple of different cut scores. SAT cut score, that would be their consideration for college readiness. The state of Illinois has a little bit higher than that in math and quite a bit higher than that in reading and writing. Our students did, this class that graduated was a really high achieving class. All 4 years, they did great things. We had almost 80% of our students meeting college readiness in reading and writing, 60% in math, high above the state average, which of course we expect to be. But this is one thing that we heard a lot from kids, that this was if they didn't do take the pre-SAT seriously their sophomore year, we gave it to them as a practice. If they didn't do the kind of online practice, it's a different animal. It's a different test than the ACT that maybe they were more familiar with. And most of our kids took both. And then last but not least is AP. So we have, every year we just keep increasing the number of AP tests taken. We're just bursting at the seams in the month of May. Every space is taken, giving AP tests because we have to give them during the school day. And we're dictated as to when and where to, what time and what day to give those tests. So that's one thing that's, our students continue to do well on. Just really impressed. It's just another way to get another post-secondary experience. And then the last chart is just kind of giving you an idea of GPA and where our students fall.
So as Joanne just went through, this is an example of some non-traditional data, and taking a look at, especially in this case, at that class of 2018. There's a lot of people's work from preschool through grade 12 to get to some of these results, and I think it's when they're leaving us, we want them to be successful, and it's through the community's efforts that we're able to provide the opportunities that you saw kind of noted there. Just talking about some of the other data that we collect so that the board's aware, and if you have any questions, I can go through it. Batavia, for the past 3 years, in partnership with the BEA, has been a part of a research study through professors at Rutgers and Cornell. And their hypothesis is that when people are collaborating, you get better achievement results and you get better productivity from the people that work in your organization. So that was really their premise going into the research study. And Batavia has participated in this because of our relationship with the Consortium for Educational Change. And they're really about union management relationships and making sure that those are strong. And so that organization has a similar kind of philosophy that when you have good partnerships between labor and management and the board, then good things happen for that school district. So we've been a part of that, and the BEA worked with us pretty extensively. And what they found over the past 3 years in this research study, which has included schools, districts from around the country, is that in case is the fact, is that when people are connecting, and the connection is not just a teacher to their principal, but it's the teacher to the principal, it's the teacher to other teachers, it's the teacher in their building to another building within the system, it's the teacher to central office. When those connections are in place, what we see are lower turnover in staff, we see higher achievement results, and we see less teacher burnout. So really some very positive things happening, and we track this and look at it by building every single year, and it's a part of the work that we do with the BEA leadership is to take a look at that because it does help us identify areas where we might need to strengthen. One of the big celebrations from this data is that it also measures a teacher's commitment to the standards and understanding of the standards, which is a key to student achievement, right? You've got to have a clear target. Our teachers are, when we look at the benchmark schools and when we look at our own results, we've improved over the past 3 years, but we're also well above where other districts are in terms of that commitment to the standards. So some really positive things around curriculum coming out of that. So that's that piece of data. Over behind Chris are two other pieces of data. One is something that we've been doing voluntarily. This is a way for teachers to get direct feedback from their students. It's called the Tripod Survey. It comes out of Harvard University and their work around effective schools. And what it says is that by asking kids directly, that's a better measure of student achievement than an actual test. So they have highly correlated this to student achievement. And what it says is if we ask students questions about, does their teacher care about them? Does my teacher challenge me? There's 7 C's. I won't go through them all. Does my teacher help consolidate my learning? Those 7 C's are a better predictor than any test about student achievement. So really it's about measuring what's going on in the classroom in terms of that classroom culture. This is something that we give to our students in grades 3 through 12 on a voluntary basis. We're hoping to expand this. That gets sent off. It comes back almost immediately in a report that goes directly to that teacher. It doesn't come to us. We get aggregate information about how schools are doing, but it's direct feedback from kids to their teacher about what's going on in this classroom. Do I feel cared about? Does my teacher give me the mindsets of growth? Those types of questions are happening. And that's a piece of data that we've done for 3 years now and are hoping to expand that because we think that's what we really want to know.
You say it's on a voluntary basis?
Teachers that volunteer and have their classes.
What's the youngest grade, but how far down is that?
It does actually go down now. When we first started doing this, it was paper pencil in grades K1, 2, and we didn't do that because the feedback loop was so long to get the results. So we've been doing it in 3 through 5 for the past 3 years, or 3 through 12.
On the computer?
On the computer.
So it's instant then, and so on?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a great piece of data that we'd like to see expanded because that's who we really need to hear from is our customers, our real customers, our students. So let's hear from them.
What are teachers saying about getting that feedback?
A lot of teachers they take this really seriously when they get that feedback from the kids.
Yeah.
So it's different than like your principal talking to you about some achievement results. It's different than a parent talking to you about what they're perceiving in the classroom. These are kids who've been with you at the elementary level all year long, and we take this in April, and they take it very seriously. They really scrutinize those results. There's a lot to celebrate in our results. Our kids feel safe, they feel cared for. There's always things to work on, but I think this would be 1, validating for teachers, and then 2, giving you some areas to grow in terms of that classroom community that you're building.
How are we supporting them then if they're like, oh, this was something that I realize I'm getting feedback on?
That's like as a system, when you only have about 45 teachers doing it, we haven't built those systems yet. So that's something that we would like to, one, see expanded and then build systems to support teachers.
So I'd like them to feel safe, like that this isn't a negative thing, but like we can all grow and here's some stuff that's pinpointed and have it be a really safe environment for them to improve in them.
Yeah, Steve and I we don't see any of the reports that go to teachers. We don't see individual results. We had a couple buildings where there were only a couple of teachers, we don't get a report on that school.
Okay.
Because it could be identifiable.
This is something you'd like to voluntarily expand?
I think we're talking with Todd and some of the VEA, and it's hard to say no, you're going to do this, but we really would like teachers to get this feedback and try this system out. So we'd like to see this be something that we spread a little bit.
There's a lot of choice involved in it too.
Let me change the question then. Is part of the evaluation process where you're gathering information back from you're getting feedback from students, parents? Yes, no, it's not part of the evaluation process. It's not part of that Danielson rubric?
No.
Huh.
So it's 100% for a teacher to take for their own use.
Correct.
It's never a weapon, it's never a tool.
How much time does it take?
Very much out.
How much time does it take for them to do this?
About 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, so it's a very quick, okay.
Yep.
When you say it's voluntary, you mean voluntary?
All 3 years.
Yeah, Todd's done it.
20 minutes, you said that? Well, that's 5th grade though, you had.
Right.
So probably a little longer maybe for 3rd graders just to go through it. It's about the same questions. Is it the same questions
3
on
through
all
5.
grades?
Yeah, 3
3
through
through
5 is the same.
Okay.
6 through 8 is the
All right.
same. 9 through 12 is the same.
Okay.
K through 2 will be the same.
So when you say it's voluntary, I assume it's voluntary for the teachers to do.
Correct.
And you said there's about 45 teachers who participate.
45 to 50 this year.
Is demographically, are those mostly elementary teachers? Are they spread throughout? Are they mostly in one building? Are they clustered? I'm trying to figure out.
We've had some clusters, we always have a very strong showing from the middle school. We have a very strong showing from the high school. Percentage-wise, it's not at 50%, but we have a good number of participants. And then by building, it depends. So at HC Storm, for example, their whole intermediate grades, 3, 4, 5, committed to doing it all. So they always get a report because they made a commitment to doing that.
When
Hooverwood gets a good number of teachers to do that as well.
can I ask Todd, when did this take place? Like, do you do it at the end of the year?
It's like,
Or is every teacher different?
no, it's like late April or early May.
Oh, okay.
There's a window. Like
There is a window.
Like any assessment, there's a window it's communicated with. They know when it's open, if you will.
Okay.
And then it shuts down, and they get the results about a week later.
So in the high school, we're only doing it for one semester.
Well, right, and so high school and middle school, they can shoot, like if you teach, at the high school, you teach 3 blocks, that teacher can choose whichever block they would like.
Can they do all 3?
No, you get 1.
Huh.
Cost would go up otherwise.
Oh,
Of course.
All right.
Yeah.
And if we expand, we're gonna have to talk about like when this happened, because you don't want the same kid taking a million surveys either.
But to have that evaluation tool is really, really helpful. And I know that we've encouraged teachers for a long time to have an evaluation tool from their students thusly, but okay.
And do we have teachers advocating or teaching or collaborating with their other teachers who aren't using it, saying, hey, this is a tool I'm using, you should use it, here's why? I mean, we have all these collaborations and these institute days. Is anybody actually promoting this who is using this so that maybe there's...
It would be organic promotion. The first year we did it, we had less. Then the second year we had more. To me, it's gained some momentum because of the stories and the feedback that people have appreciated. I've heard every level, elementary, middle school, high school, this is anecdotal, telling me things like, this is the best feedback I've ever gotten in my life. Like, the people who have taken it have really enjoyed it. And what we've also seen is a lot of repeat customers. Like, I took it 2 years ago, I want to take it again, because they embrace that feedback and it can be very powerful for them.
Right, and then I was hoping that that excitement could be fostered so that they can encourage other teachers to do it. So rather than us forcing them to do it, it's kind of, hey, this will really help you. You should do this and they should want to do it, is kind of...
Yeah, and Tom and Amy before have been very supportive of this.
Okay.
The last piece of data is we do an annual survey called Bright Lights, which is about technology integration, but really it's more about the 4 C's, so communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. So really that's why we have technology, is to really foster those skills and do them in different ways. So that survey is another way of saying, is our technology integration working? Are we basically getting rid of the barriers that we have for kids? And then are we having them do the right work in terms of facilitation of technology? So, what our results have shown is that we have almost no barriers to access because of the work that Tony and the tech team have done over the past decade. We have ubiquitous Wi-Fi, kids have access to what they need, and we're working on some of those other pieces. So, one of the direct results of this survey is an expansion of our digital literacy kind of program in terms of how do I behave appropriately on the internet with the resources that I have access to. Because, I think some of you are on Facebook, you can see that people may not know how to behave socially on social media. And we need to teach that to our kids so that they become responsible citizens who use technology. So that's just one of the examples of how that data has led to us really beefing up our programming, our teaching and learning in that area. So just a quick overview of the data. I appreciate some of these questions. I've already highlighted some things, and I'll follow up with some of you with questions that I have. But if you have answers to those 3 questions about what do you value, what as a board do you need to do your work, and what do you think the community is looking for, I'd appreciate feedback on that. But thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. And Joanne, thank you.
Joe, before you walk off?
Yeah.
Brad, I won't keep you all here. But you know what, I should probably do this personally. We've had a big upswing, though, in community service stuff in the last 5-10 years. What do you say?
In terms of like required? or-
Kids being engaged in
Yes.
community service, particularly high school, middle school level. We've expanded some requirements, I think, in some high school courses.
Course by course. Mhm.
Yeah,
Not a graduation requirement.
and that's something that we feel pretty good about.
Always could do better, of course.
Always could do better.
Yeah, but yeah, that's, something that's a positive. We're seeing a positive growth in that, just in terms of organically, kids giving back, but also within courses.
And we're going to start to see more of it with the new social studies standards. One of the big components of that is informed action. So it's great that you learn something about history, but you need to go do something with that knowledge. And that, in our first kind of iterations of social studies curriculum rewrites, that was still lacking. So we've kind of taken some steps back and really tried to hammer home the importance of that. And I think we'll see a lot more community service and community engagement activities become a part of our curriculum.
I think I heard a statistic that Interact is the largest student club. Is that true? Yeah.
It's always Interact or Key Club, kind of.
They compete, but between the two of them, they're
And
communicating.
different students, yeah.
Good.
I would just make a point, and I think you guys are all doing great work, and I appreciate the reading scores and the writing scores, but when I see an upswing in kids being citizens, being active, engaged citizens, to me, that's what the whole Key Party is all about. That's what we're doing here. So anyway, thank you both.
I appreciate this too because it's been the entire time I've been on the board that we've been talking about other ways of looking at our students, and I feel like every year we get better information and more opportunities to see them in different ways and the things that they're doing. So this has been a great response, and I know sometimes we sort of floundered in telling you what we wanted to see, and so you kept coming, here's this, here's this, here's this, and now we have a plethora of information that gives us a really good overview of our students, so thank you. That is all of our, there were actually, other than consent agenda, no action items tonight, so we will jump into administration comments.
Like I mentioned last month, there's still so much going on, even though it's the summer. You see students everywhere. We have 2 elementary schools that are housing some extended school year programs, Hooverwood and Grace McWayne. And then there's always tons of kids at the high school. There's a summer school program there as well as all the clubs. But in addition to that, we're excited to show you some of the projects. As you could see, Tony, showed you that capital projects budget of $1.6 million from FY18, and you're going to see some of the outcomes that the capital projects committee, they're able to do some projects within that budget, and there are so many of them right now this summer. And also some building budgets were able to support some of these projects. So they're on a smaller scale, but there are so many of them, and we're excited to show you. So I did put board tours on your calendar for Wednesday, August 29th. And if you're able to join us, that's great. If not, just let me know and I'll walk you around and show you some of the projects. HC Storm, I know, was a big one. That was the office staff at HC Storm had been saying that they felt like they weren't as welcoming as they could be to the community, because that when you walked in, there was a barrier and they were not facing the door, and they had an idea of how they could redo their office space, and it is looking fantastic so far. And the middle school, huge entranceway, as you know, those doors and the windows there have been really not functioning properly in the front of Rotolo, and that is an enormous project from within the capital projects budget that they prioritized. There's the AGS drop-off lane that's going to be a game changer there for student safety during the drop-off time. Those are the big ones. Then there's
the parking lot at Louise White.
parking lot at Louise White.
Nothing more exciting than you.
Right, JBN is having office work done as well. The high school has the new cafeteria tables and new seating opportunities for students in the atrium as well. Another classroom that's going to be like a model for some flexible seating. We'll look at that in the fall if you're able to join us. Like I said, if you're not able to come, just let me know and we can always you can get the personal tour.
Are all the construction that's going on right now, is everything pretty much on schedule? It will be done before school starts?
We're doing pretty well. We're doing pretty well with custodial too, because that's a big issue, getting all the schools clean. There is one issue that I was talking to Mark about today, where they're not going to have the flashing that goes around the RMS entrance ready. It's not that we won't be able to use the space, but it won't be completely ready for school to start, because there's an 8-week lead time on the material.
But they'll be able to use the doors.
They'll be able to use the doors.
Right.
But right now, everything's on track.
Good.
Awesome.
Good.
All right.
Yep.
Any board comments today?
Just want to say thanks to everybody today for the work that they did, and for Tony, Brett, Joanne, and getting all this data in to us and the finances, and I think we're at least going in the right direction. And so, thank you for all you guys' work. And Steve, are we all good on hiring and stuff?
Yeah, we're close. We got a couple of people. but
Okay.
We're close. They were interviewing today and yesterday at the high school and middle school, so
All right, well, thank you.
Close.
And again, thank you for Lisa for meetings and Kathy for all you do for me. Thank you.
And thank you, Todd, and Steve, and the stipend committee for getting, you guys did great work, ironed it out, got there. Good job.
We do have
It's a
closed
good
session.
schedule.
Sorry.
Good schedule.
John? We do have closed session on the agenda. There is no action after, but I would entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes and employees.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gaspar, second by Lowe. All in favor?
All right.
All right, we'll adjourn to closed session. Oh, sorry, any opposed? Motion carries.
I thought about having to stare down here, this was John.